Friends, you probably know that the World Economic Forum, I call them the WEF'ers, led by, yes, oh my gosh, Nasal Schwab, as he is also known, they basically are the ones behind the idea that you will own nothing and be happy. And they call this Build Back Better. And some of you very cleverly showed me that a lowercase b looks like the number 6. So 666, which we know is the mark of the beast. It basically represents evil. And it's one of those signs and symbols that the bad guys like to broadcast so that those in the know will know that this had their fingerprints all over it. I do believe that this Maui disaster has dirty fingerprints all over it. This is about my 5th video that I've done on this topic. I will have a link for you below to my fires playlist. So if you are new to the channel, welcome. I've been covering this for a long time. I've been covering the fires in California, in Canada. I've been studying this for a long, long time and bringing you more coverage because you're asking me to do it. So the powers that shouldn't be want as their end goal a one world government. They basically want us to go back to the, well, if I don't even know if there was a Stone Age, but they basically want us to go back. I'll just use that as an example to when there were slaves and slave owners. And many of you would say, Peggy, we never left those times. And I know exactly what you mean. So they basically are playing out biblical predictions in the book of Revelations, which says there will be a one world government and a one world religion, but it will be led by the Antichrist. Now, I am not putting forth the fact or the presupposition or the supposition that Josh Green New Deal is the Antichrist. I don't think he is. But wouldn't it be interesting if this gets him on national news and then he becomes a candidate for the presidency because he is the United Nations darling? I will be bringing you another deep dive video on Josh Green with all of his UN connections. So the United Nations started by several countries after World War II. Some of you would say, and I would agree with you, that perhaps World War II was the reason it happened so that they could create the germ, basically the embryo of what would then become the one world government. And it's absolutely really despicable to look at these United Nations meetings and talks and all of this, because you see that they are basically bringing governments from all over the world to become this one world government. And Josh Green was the keynote speaker at a United Nations conference just a couple of weeks ago. What a coinkydink, what perfect timing. So the United Nations has several different agendas, as I call them. And it used to be Agenda 21. Now there's Agenda 2030, there's 2040, there's 2050. And basically it is all about enslaving you and me and taking away our freedom under the banner of Sustainable Development Goals, also known as SDG. I'm giving you this background. Many of you already know, but some of you are new to this. So I wanted to frame this for you. The phrases that they have and that they push are climate change and the climate crisis, and they want climate justice. These are the phrases that they use. They use phrases like resiliency and sustainable and other things like this. Another phrase is build back better. That goes hand in hand with the nasal Schwab over at, and the WEF'ers who are telling us that you will own nothing and be happy. It goes hand in hand with the smart cities, now known as the 15-minute cities. This is where you see the bike paths. They take out street signals, stop signals at the intersection, and they put in the roundabouts. And then they also put in the stack'em and pack'ems, which are these high density, like kind of skyscraper apartments and condominiums that, at least in the area where I live, are extremely expensive. They look like they're empty. They're all near railroad stations and old shopping malls and things like that. And you've told me they're all over your cities and states as well. This is all part of that agenda driven by the United Nations. So what I'm about to share with you, and I want you to listen to the phrases that I just shared with you, and you're going to hear them come out of Josh Green New Deal. The reason I'm calling him Green New Deal is because the cronies in our federal government are all about getting rid of gas and oil and coal, which is what we need. This is how we became basically a type of society where we could have electricity and create things and thrive. And they want to get rid of all of that. And you'll hear in his own words. All right, let me share my screen. And from time to time, I will unplug my, I'll plug back in my audio so I can make some commentary. And then I also don't want to play the entire thing for 7 minutes because of copyright laws. I think I can only play about maybe a minute at a time or 2 minutes at a time. So I'll try to do it that way. All right, let me share my screen. I will leave a link for you below so you can listen to it again and again and share this with other people. All right. Oh, whoops, I don't need to do that. Let me share my screen. Here we go. Okay, so here we have it. This was 5 hours ago. This is their local ABC News.
Now, you just told me that you do have the latest for us as far as people going back to their homes on Maui.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for the coverage. Mayor Bisson's and his team have been working all night long, putting together the plan with us to get people back to their homes. So they will announce today the capacity for people to, in a controlled fashion, go back to their homes. There will likely be a curfew, but we know how badly people want to get back to the extent that their homes are still there. Now, originally, we thought it was just a couple hundred structures burned. As you know, there are many more than that. The estimates will continue to rise. People, in many cases, will find tragically that their home was destroyed. So
I got to go back just a little bit.
Does
that look like fire damage or more like bomb damage? Just asking.
People, in many cases, will find tragically that their home was destroyed. So
there are these boats that I mentioned in a previous video. Metal does not catch on fire. It is not combustible. They are in the ocean. This looks like it comes from a different type of heat, which is known as, I'm trying to outwit the nitwits here on the algorithm. You know what it's like. It's when you want to heat up your soup in the kitchen. You don't put it on the stove. You put it in that little oven. Yeah, that's what this looks like to me. And to you, many of you said.
Our hearts are out for people.
This is in the ocean. This is in the ocean. All of that burned. You're telling me all of that was wood. It was all combustible.
Love is out for people who lost loved ones. We're being careful about the return to properties because we want to be sensitive to what they will see. We're also being careful because there's just so much uncertainty and questions in the air because there's very little communication. The communication systems were destroyed.
The communication systems were destroyed. This is why they're saying there was no cell phone service yet. In the video I just brought you, and from eyewitnesses, they said that they called the police who told them to jump in the ocean. That may have happened. I don't know how they were able to do it when there were no communications. Let's continue, shall we? Oh, look over here. Tornadoes on the ground, isolated tornadoes. Yes, they never stop, do they?
So people will be able to get back to their houses today. And meanwhile, we will do all that we can to continue search and rescue.
So FEMA, now they're going to be helping with going into some of the buildings because I know that people are concerned about how many people have perished throughout this. And I know getting in is kind of a treacherous situation.
It is. So the benefit of our relationships with Washington are that we had FEMA here on the scene immediately.
We had FEMA on the scene immediately. Wow, almost like FEMA was ready to go on the scene. They love their FEMA. Well, it is Hawaii, I know. Okay, let's continue.
Bob Fenton has been extraordinary, and his team are bringing in additional resources as we speak, flying in overnight. Also, the FEMA director will be here tomorrow, and I will be with her touring the damage again on Maui tomorrow, likely with the other leaders, including the mayor. So we will have all the leadership from the top on down here. But yes, we will have to go into many of the houses with our police and fire, and they have been heroic. There's incredible stress on them. So let's all be as kind as we can, acknowledging the stresses on those individuals who are, in some cases, finding some of their friends and family members themselves who who have suffered injury or worse.
The eyewitness reports and every bit of footage that I have studied shows no firemen on the scene, no fire trucks, no hoses, no water drops. So I'm respectful of those of you that are in the first responders, that are the firemen and the EMTs and the policemen, you know, disaster and all of that. I get that. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Well, maybe I should just let this one go. What do you think about referring to people as heroes? Just asking. Just asking. Let's continue.
In the fires. We will be there in the houses. Right now, the fatality count is tragically 55. It will rise. Of the many people that are, quote, missing, it's just.
It will rise. He knows that.
That we haven't been able to contact them for the most part, we hope. We do not want to speculate as to how many people have actually passed away. I think you'll remember that since statehood, 1959, we've only had one tragedy of this magnitude. That was in 1960 when 61 people died from the tsunami in Hilo. So this will likely become sometime today the most tragic loss of life from a natural disaster. But that's how we're approaching it. We are already putting together the plan to house the individuals who have been displaced. I was on with the president this morning and the secretary of HUD, and also Pete Buttigieg, whose infrastructures are for the nation. We're doing all of these things to bring all the resources to our people to help them through this.
And some say that the evacuation orders came too late. What about that, if their response to that?
It's very difficult to guess at when the evacuation order could be made. Already, the mayor has clearly shared with us that at the hotels, people were told to stay in place because they didn't want to burden the roads as firefighters were coming in and police were coming in. That was an order that was made. Then the fire broke out in the late night. And my understanding is.
Now, I don't know if he's just confused or he doesn't understand the time frame, but he said that her question is, why was there no evacuation order? And he said the people in the hotels were told to stay because the firemen were coming in and the policemen, and they needed to have the roads open. And I do know it's like a very narrow or very limited in and out for Lahaina, if it's the same as when I was there many, many years ago. Many of you said that's how it is. But then he said, and then the fire broke out. So I don't know if he's mistaken his time. And then he also said, he used a strange verb tense. It's hard to know when the emergency order could be given. Let's just back up a little bit. I want to make sure that I'm hearing it correctly, because this does not add up to me at all. Let's just go back a little tiny bit. I want to see your comments as well. It's very important. Many people said they did not get any notice of this, even though the news report, and actually at the end, I'm going to read to you, if I remember, the news report that said that there was a fire warning for Lahaina prior to this. So maybe that's what this is about. Let's listen again.
Already, the mayor has clearly shared with us that at the hotels, people were told to stay in place because they didn't want to burden the roads as firefighters were coming in and police were coming in. That was an order that was made.
That, if their response to that?
It's very difficult to guess at when the evacuation order could be made.
When the evacuation order could be made? I don't understand that.
Already, the mayor has clearly shared with us that at the hotels, people were told to stay in place because they didn't want to burden the roads as firefighters were coming in and police were coming in. That was an order that was made. Then the fire broke out in the late night. And my understanding is in Ahupua'a, as you go from mountain to sea, with 80-mile-per-hour gusted winds, it moved the fire very quickly. I would never blame or disparage anyone during these kind of moments of tragedy. Everyone did their very best to try to rescue people. In time, we'll look at all of these things and continue to try to improve. But this was the largest fire in an era where you have
Sorry.
global warming, dried conditions, in other words, droughts, and then a storm.
Interesting that buffered right then, because he said we had dry conditions, global warming. He just slipped that right in. Oops, sorry.
But this was the largest fire in an era where you have global warming.
So he's making excuses for why there was no evacuation. In my previous video, I explained that Hawaii has the reputation of the most robust emergency notification system. In fact, there was basically a couple of years ago, prior to all of the hogwash that we've lived through for the last few years, there was what I would call a terrorist attack on that island. On Hawaii, at least on the island of Kauai, where I have friends living, and they texted me saying, I don't think I'm going to see you again, because we just got an emergency alert system on our phone that said there is an incoming nuclear bomb. Do you guys remember that? And I think it was coming in from North Korea, and people probably had heart attacks. They probably died from hearing that news. And then Hawaii said, oh, we were just practicing. It was just a mistake. Somebody flipped the wrong switch, something like that. They gave a lame excuse, just like he's giving a lame excuse. But aside from that, it's known that Hawaii has this very robust system because of the hurricanes. So why was it not put into place? And he's making excuses now, saying we have to be very kind to these people. That's just so wrong in my view. Then he says there were very dry conditions and global warming. He sneaks that in. And as I showed you in the previous video, these winds that are coming from the hurricane, my understanding, and people that have verified this for me, that they're going from the ocean onto land. So how could they have driven sparks or flames into the ocean to ignite boats that are made out of steel or aluminum or some kind of metal? It's not combustible. So that doesn't add up unless there was a direct hit from a different type of energy. And my question is, how do they do it? Spelled DEW. You can research that as well. Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman. You'll see exactly how they do it. All right. Let me unplug again. I have to keep plugging in and unplugging so that you can hear my audio a little better. It doesn't sound so loud and tinny. All right, let's just back up a tiny bit. We're halfway through, and then you're going to hear these other phrases. All right, here we go.
Try to rescue people. In time, we'll look at all of these things and continue to try to improve. But this was the largest fire in an era where you have global warming, dried conditions, in other words, droughts, and then a storm that passed very far south of the islands, but did leave residual winds. It was a perfect storm in that sense.
If it was a perfect storm, why you, as the governor of Hawaii, why did you not have more of the first responders ready to go? Why didn't you have additional firefighters from other islands? Why didn't you ask for help from FEMA in advance to have National Guard on hand, because there were these hurricane force storms and global warming you're so worried about? So wouldn't you have prepared the island with better budgeting for these first responders that you're calling heroes? Why didn't you have more police on guard? Why didn't you have people being told that there could have been a fire with these hurricane force winds and the drought that you're talking about and the global warming? You fell down on the job if you believe all of that hogwash that you just spewed. Why weren't you prepared? Why in this day and age, when I can have my cell phone tell me way up ahead that there's a car accident, yet you don't have the fire technology to put out these fires? You're not able to have drones or other technology showing you and guiding you to put out these fires? It looks to me and to many of the eyewitnesses that they were told to stand down. What about that, Josh Green New Deal? Let's continue.
Where you have global warming, dried conditions, in other words, droughts, and then a storm that passed very far south of the islands, but did leave residual winds. It was a perfect storm in that sense, that a small amount of fire spread quickly because of wind.
So what are you suggesting that people do as far as like helping the people from Maui?
The first thing I would say is if you have resources, give to the Hawaii Community Foundation Maui Strong Fund or other funds that have been set up, but that's one I know is ready to go and is.
Let me ask you, Maui strong, Santa Barbara strong, Arizona strong, Denver strong, Las Vegas strong. Let me ask you, do you think there's any possibility whatsoever that there could be some fraud when involved in fake, phony, false fundraising opportunities? I'm not talking about what he's saying. I'm talking about others that jump on this and start putting up the GoFundMes and all of that. I'm certain that that could never happen, that there would never be any fraud involved in donations whatsoever. By the way, if you're thinking of donating to the American Red Cross, I would ask you to dig a little deeper and to think again. Take a look at how much money their top executives make. If you do want to give money, I would find a family who needs money, an animal shelter, perhaps, those that rescue animals that are on the streets doing the work. That's who I would give my money to personally. All right, let's continue.
Receiving millions and millions of dollars from around the planet. If you have a home that's outside of this disaster zone, contact our office or the mayor's office. We will set up a hotline so you can offer service and you can offer some of that capacity to house people.
I'm stopping frequently because I want to comment on each part, and I have to unplug and plug in my audio to speak clearly here. A couple of days ago, in a previous video, I predicted that this was one of the side effects. And I talked about years ago, Airbnb coming on the scene, which I have used. I've used successfully. I think I've had good experiences with them. It's almost like that Alexa and the Ring camera where you're like, wait a minute, is there a different hidden agenda here? And I used to think to myself, you know what? Everybody that puts a room on Airbnb, the government will know that you have an extra room. They will know that you have an ADU or you have another property. And I remember this in the fires back in Malibu. I think that was 2018. And I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to start saying that you are going to be forced to house people because this is part of their Green New Deal agenda, that you will not have your own private property. You will not have your own house. And if you personally have one, you're going to be forced or maybe given an incentive to take people in. Now, I am not denigrating the idea of people who actually want to reach out on their own. I think that can be very helpful. I would, again, beware of scammers or something like that. But if you do have the Airbnb, you're like, oh my gosh, I have this room, I could do it. But think about what could be happening down the road. I do predict that down the road, the government will start requiring people to house others or to give up, or that you will only be allowed a certain square footage. Friends, this happened in the Russian Revolution. You go back and study history. All right. Last century, 100+ years ago, this is exactly what happened. Those that were of the upper class and the royalty and all of that, they had their houses taken away. First, it was just step by step. Oh, you've got a whole other floor that nobody's using. Well, here are the people that are going to come live in it, and you have to allow them to live in it. So this is history that we are seeing repeated. Again, I realize that there are people that need places to stay. He also is about to talk about hotels that will be making rooms available. And that probably, again, I'm in favor of people getting their housing, but this is a slippery slope. Let's continue.
We are going to pursue 2,000 hotel units at least, and we are in conversations with the national leadership of Airbnb.
There you
so
go.
We can get another series of hundreds of units for the people that will need recovery. Some of this will take time to set up. So if you have the ability to house a loved one or friend from Maui, please do that. The airlines have been very good and will accommodate getting them over to Oahu or to another island.
2,000 hotel rooms that apparently if you live in Hawaii, your tax dollars or the federal government, he's going to talk about that the federal government is going to pick up 75% of the cost. That might be in another interview I heard of this, which means your money, and you may say, I think that's a great use of the money. Fine. Absolutely. If you believe that, but 2,000 hotel rooms are going to be used now for the individuals. What is that going to do for tourism in Maui, especially in the Lahaina area? And then he said, we've been in conversation with Airbnb to get units to house people, which means Airbnb is either going to contact those who already have rooms or properties available, and who's going to pay for that? So I find it very, very interesting. I would love to know what you think. Here, let's continue. We're almost done.
Or they can even drive to another part of Maui. This is going to be a multi-year recovery. It's going to take essentially years to rebuild Lahaina, which was destroyed, but we will build it back better, and we'll build it back proudly as we.
All right, just for fun, I'm going to slow that down to 75%. I recommend when you're listening to videos, slow them down so that you can catch every word they say. You can also not watch the audio, just listen to see if you can catch other things. And then in the case like this, I would not listen to the audio, and I would look at his expressions to see, does this look like a man who is in charge of a disaster? Does he look like this has been something that was very troubling for him, very difficult for him? I don't see the anguish. All right, build back better. He slipped that in. And then he also slipped in, we're going to build it back proudly, because we're all about pride. So maybe that's just an expression, but let's replay a little bit more slowly. He said it's a multi-year effort. I wonder if they're going to build back in a 15-minute city, in a smart city, if it's all going to be electric, no use of gas, because that's the other thing they want to get rid of, is everything has to go to electric. So they're going to be able to build it back better according to the UN agenda.
Airbnb, so that we can get another series of hundreds of units drive to another part of Maui better, and we'll build it back. This is going to be a multi-year recovery. It's going to take essentially years to rebuild Lahaina, which was destroyed, but we will build it back better, and we'll build it back proudly as we do in Hawaii. We will find a way to make sure that there's more housing in Lahaina over time, and that will be part of the recovery, the federal support, and all the work that people do.
All right. How do you like them apples? I'm stopping on purpose because I want you to consider what he just said. We will build it back better. It will take many years. We will increase the housing. Are they going to be putting up the rabbit hutches? That's what I refer to, those stack 'em and pack 'ems. Probably. Are they going to ruin the waterfront, the old town of Lahaina? We will see. Let's continue. I'll just let it play out now.
So what are Maui officials telling you about the wildfires, and what can be done in terms of investigation to make sure something like that doesn't happen, not only on Maui, but any other island?
That's a very good question. So the official data is that 80% of the fire is contained right now. I do suspect it is more than that now that we've had more time, but we are only going to get updates at the 7 o'clock hour from the officials. So I think that we will see these fires be completely contained, if not today, in the near future. The problem, of course, is conditions remain dry. Fortunately, the winds are lower, and they were dropping tens and tens of thousands of gallons of water from the helicopters that we all provided onto the site. We saw that personally. I would tell this, people need to be very safe, be very careful right now. Obviously, take every precaution not to set any new fire, to have any heat out there in the dry grasses. That goes without saying. Going forward, I think we have to have a much broader conversation, a practical conversation about water use on Maui, because we have to know that we can saturate the land with water, whether it's through agriculture or housing. That's been an ongoing debate, and it can't be a political debate. It has to be a practical, life-saving debate. And so my team, which already has a water committee, will add that. Right now, we're in the acute phase of recovery for this disaster, so we won't be able to address that for the next few weeks. But needless to say, our team has authorized the full release of water. There should not be any restrictions on water given to the people right now to make sure that there's less fire.
Okay, so I need to ask, especially those of you that told me that Lahaina is on the west of the island and that it is not in the rainforest and that it is dry and that there has been a drought. All right, in California, there has been a multi-year, like decade-long drought that I believe is engineered. I believe it is intensified, magnified, augmented. There may be some actual natural components to it, but the fact in California that they do not allow you to water your grass, that destroys the hydrologic cycle that actually puts more moisture in the air that would allow the clouds to fill with that condensation so that it could then rain. So preventing water usage during a drought is the exact wrong thing to do. I've done videos on this channel before about that exact thing. Again, look up a 4th grade science book, an actual book, not online, because they will probably change that information, but you have to have moisture in the air in order to get rid of the drought. And in California, they've done the exact wrong thing. They pay people to rip out their landscaping. This might be shocking to those of you that live outside of California. People gleefully, just like they suffocated themselves, they can't wait to rip out their trees and their grass, which actually reduces CO2 because trees breathe in oxygen, and then they replaced it with concrete and rocks, and worst of all, artificial grass, which is made from plastic, which comes from petroleum. And they're talking about getting rid of fossil fuels that doesn't come from fossils. If they did, we could go raid all the graveyards. All right. It's a renewable source. It's the blood of the earth that God has created. It is an inexhaustible resource. You can research abiotic oil, just like we never run out of water. God created it all. It takes a different form and shape, whether vapor or rain or snow or ice. And then once it falls to the earth, it becomes a part of the underground of the underground water, which is also known as primary water. And that entire cycle repeats. They are trying to destroy that by these wrong measures of restricting water usage. In an actual drought, you need to increase your water so that there will be more watering of the lawn. You need to plant more trees, more grass. You can plant food that you can eat. So no, concrete and rocks and artificial grass. I have to do a whole nother video on that. So I don't know what they were doing on Maui about the water restrictions, but because he just said you can use all the water you want. Well, it's a little too little too late, Josh Green, New Deal. All right, let's finish up here. Thanks for sticking with me. All right, a little bit of buffering here.
Thank you so much, Governor Green. Really appreciate you spending time with us. And our prayers go out to everyone on Maui.
Thank you so much for that. Aloha.
Aloha. Mahalo.
Okay, that was the end of that. All right. What I want to tell you is that in the early news reports that I compiled, and let me just grab that here because I've got it in my notes here. All right. This came from I believe it was CBS News, and I will find that for you. It says, amid a string of wildfires burning in Hawaii that forced evacuations and cut power to thousands, massive blazes in the tourist town of Lahaina on Maui, fueled by a mix of land and atmospheric conditions that can create fire weather, sent people running into the ocean seeking safety. Now, that's where I raised my eyebrows, because running into the ocean is a different image than hopping over the boardwalk or jumping from a ledge. So that's why I was saying it seems strange that people would, then have to be rescued by the Coast Guard if they were just waiting in the water. Anyway, I've covered that many times. And at that point, it said at least 6 people were killed. That's one of their numbers. Later, it became 36, 3 sixes, 666, the mark of the beast. And then later we just heard from him that it was 55 and he's confident that there will be more casualties. That was really creepy to hear that. All right. Buildings on both sides of Front Street were engulfed, said Front Street business owner. There were no fire trucks. I think the fire department was overwhelmed. How were they overwhelmed? You were at the scene of the fire. Why weren't they there? The Coast Guard confirmed to the CBS News that crews had rescued about a dozen people who jumped into the water in an effort to escape the Lahaina fires. And I've questioned that in the past. And again, here comes another one. Maui can't handle this, says Patrick Torfey. A lot of people lost their jobs because of just now because their businesses were burned. A lot of people lost their homes. This is going to be devastating for Maui. All right, the sub-headline, what caused the Maui fire? Much of Maui was under a red flag warning for fire risk when the wildfires broke out, but the exact cause of the blaze is still unknown. It will never be known. It will probably be blamed on an arsonist instead of on the garsonists, as you've told me, the federal torch bearers, and they will probably say it was either PG&E, or I'm sorry, that's our electric company, whatever the Hawaii electricity company. And then, of course, the rates will increase because they will have to cover their costs for improving their fire safety. And it goes on and on. The grift continues. If Josh knew Green New Deal, if it was under a red flag warning for fire risk, why weren't you better prepared? Why was there no emergency alert going to the people when the state of Hawaii sent out an emergency alert several years ago saying that an incoming nuclear attack was imminent? That's terrorism in my book. But you couldn't send one out for the fire? You couldn't have the fire and the police and the National Guard and FEMA on the scene in advance? All right, so much here that doesn't add up. All right, friends, I am going to end the video here. I rarely broadcast on the weekend, but I might have a couple of bonus videos for you because I do want to share with you the duper's delight. All right, I did come across a couple of videos where people are smirking and smiling very inappropriately. Now, I do understand that there are situations where people are under emotional distress, and it actually happens where people will laugh because it is a response. It's kind of an emotional response and they're laughing inappropriately. But when I see it again and again, and it's not really laughter, but it's a smirk, it's called duper's delight. It's what the expression is of people when they are hiding something, when they are deceiving you. And so I will share that with you in an upcoming video. I'm also going to continue to bring you more information about Josh Green New Deal and the speech that he gave at the United Nations, and a little clip of what he said was, in Hawaii, we're going to do better. We are behind on some of the sustainable development goals, but you have my word that we are going to infuse SDG, sustainable development goals, into every policy in Hawaii. And that's exactly what the man said. I'll bring that to you in an upcoming video. I'm going to sign off for now. I had back-to-back double headers, friends. Thank you so much. Now, for those of you that are interested, I would like you to join my Substack. It's free. There will be a link for you below. I would also like you to watch my fire playlist so you can see the other videos that I did about this, because I likely have answered some of the questions that you're raising right now. And this is not a sponsored video, but I do want to let you know, because some of you are asking, Peggy, how can we be prepared? One thing that I do is we have these buckets of food that come from My Patriot Supply. And if you go through my link, which is preparewithpeggy.com, I have a link for you below, you'll get some kind of incentive and savings and all of that. And we have a bucket for each one of our family members. And that food lasts for up to 25 years. Hopefully I'll never have to use it. It's not the kind of food that I normally eat, but I know that it's peace of mind. It's like kind of a food insurance for me. So that is one way that you can get some peace of mind. You do want to have a go bag. You want to know that you've got some money on hand if they're still taking money, your debit card, and whatever else that you might be able to grab quickly and take with you if you need to flee for some reason. Always have an evacuation plan. Have a plan where your loved ones know where you might meet or how you can get in contact. I always recommend that you take your phone numbers off of your cell phone and you write them down in a little book, because I don't know people's phone numbers. I only have them in my cell phone. And if there's no cell service, and maybe I can get to somebody's house, maybe they have a landline and I can call them, or I'm borrowing somebody else's cell phone, then at least I'll have a way of getting in touch. So those are a couple of how-tos as we end up this video. I want you to get out of the spin cycle of fear. One of the reasons I'm bringing you this information is because we are engaging our intellectual center instead of our emotional center. I don't want you to be in that spin cycle. I want you to think clearly and sober-mindedly and not live in fear. I want you to get right with God, to know that He has a plan for your life, and He is your source of protection and direction and peace of mind. You know, I hope I live another 30 plus years in this life, God willing. And if not, I know that that was His plan for me. And so every day I strive to share my God-given gifts, to make the most of each day, to spend time with those that I love, doing something productive, so that when the time comes, I will not have any regrets. So that's another kind of encouraging word that I can leave you with, friends. And please let me know in the comments as well how you stay encouraged and how we can get through this, because I do predict that there will be smoother sailing, brighter days ahead when we can continue to expose these evildoers. That's how the emperor, who wore no clothes, right? And he thought that he was wearing these, silken golden threads and all of that. And it was a little boy that pointed out and said, look, he's wearing no clothes. And it was once that the message got out there and the truth got out there, that it trickled through the townspeople, and they all said, you're right, I was being duped. So the more that we can get the word out, the more that people can wake up. All right, friends, my prayers are with all of those that are suffering in these tragedies that don't need to happen. Let's continue to be vigilant and also prepared. And I look forward to seeing you in an upcoming broadcast. Thank you, everybody, for your support and prayers as well. See you soon.